There's this really beautiful idea, isn't there? That we can handle pretty much anything life throws at us if we can just wrap it in a story. That we can get a handle on our pain just by shaping it into a narrative. For a lot of people, that's the absolute foundation of healing.
But here's the twist. What happens when the storyteller's own story gets in the way? When some hidden chapter from their past starts ghostwriting their present?
So that's what we're going to dive into. We're going to explore those unseen influences, right? The ghosts from our past that can show up and haunt our most important conversations, usually when we least expect it.
And our story begins in a place that's supposed to be all about healing, a therapy session. But something is going very, very wrong.
So let's meet Jamie. He's a doctoral student training to be a therapist. And on paper, he looks like a total rock star. He's smart, he's funny, he's quick. His supervisor sees a ton of potential.
And then there's his client, Beth. You can tell she's really struggling, just trying to open up. But Jamie, our star therapist, he's kind of steamrolling her. He's all jokes and frantic energy, and her actual pain is just being ignored.
So this is the puzzle, right? We've got a sharp, capable therapist and a client who desperately needs help. So why is there this massive disconnect? Well, the answer isn't about skill or even about his intentions. It's about that ghost in the room.
See, this total breakdown in communication, it's not random. It's actually rooted in a really powerful psychological thing that honestly affects all of us.
And that ghost, well, it has a name: countertransference. It sounds complicated, but it's really just when a therapist's own baggage, their old wounds, their defense mechanisms, starts to unconsciously drive the bus. Their past starts bleeding into the client's present.
And this is the key that unlocked everything for Jamie. He had this major breakthrough and realized his frantic energy, it wasn't for Beth at all. It was an old survival strategy he learned as a little kid, trying to cheer up his mom who was chronically depressed.
I mean, let that sink in. In that therapy room, Jamie wasn't really a therapist. He was a little kid, playing out an old family drama. He couldn't connect with Beth's sadness because, deep down, that kind of sadness felt like a terrifying echo of his mother's. A danger he'd learned to fight off with jokes and constant motion.
Now, Jamie's story is a really clear example, but countertransference can be way more subtle. It could be that feeling of dread you get before talking to a certain person. Or maybe you find yourself arguing with them a lot. Or just zoning out, daydreaming, when they're trying to tell you something important. These are all little red flags that your own stuff is getting in the way.
And look, this dynamic isn't just for therapists. We all have these ghosts. The past walks into the room with every single one of us, and a lot of the time, it's in the form of unresolved trauma.
Here's the most important thing to get about trauma. It's not just about the event itself. It's the emotional response to it. It's an experience so overwhelming it can completely shatter your fundamental belief that the world is a safe or fair place.
And trauma isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. We can kind of break it down into two types. There's a single episode or small T trauma, like a car crash, and then there's complex or big T trauma. That's the stuff that's ongoing or repeated, like childhood abuse. Now, both are incredibly damaging, but that complex trauma often gets really woven into the fabric of a person's identity.
And the effects of trauma, wow, they can ripple out into every corner of a person's life. It can pop up as physical pain, emotional turmoil, or just this deep, deep sense of meaninglessness. And this is exactly why it's so incredibly hard for so many survivors to ask for help. Facing the wound can feel just as terrifying as getting the wound in the first place.
Okay, so whether you're a therapist wrestling with your own stuff or just anyone dealing with the ghosts of the past, how do you even begin to manage all this? Well, let's look at a few tools.
For therapists, this takes real work. It's a whole disciplined process. You have to pick a client that challenges you, journal about it, and then, the hard part, you record your sessions, transcribe them word for word, and analyze your own reactions. You're basically turning that therapeutic microscope back on yourself.
But what about for the rest of us? Well, one of the most powerful things you can do is start to reframe your self-talk. The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, they have an absolutely massive impact. There's this super simple but profound technique called the 3 C's. First, you have to catch that negative thought right as it happens. The "I'm such a failure" thought. Then you challenge it. You ask yourself, wait a second, is that really true? Or did I just make one mistake? And finally, you change it. You replace it with something more realistic and, frankly, more helpful. Like, okay, I made a mistake, and I can learn from it. Okay, here's another really powerful tool. It's called the empty chair technique. You literally put an empty chair in front of you and you imagine someone or something is sitting in it. It could be a person, it could be a part of yourself you struggle with, it could even be the trauma itself. And you just talk to it. You say everything you need to say. It helps you get all those jumbled feelings out in the open so you can finally start to process them.
And all this brings us to a really crucial point. Healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning how to integrate it into your present.
This is where we get this amazing idea of the vulnerable healer. It suggests that real strength doesn't come from being perfect or untouched by pain. Nope. It comes from having the courage to be aware of your own weaknesses, your own wounds, and learning how to work with them. And this isn't just for therapists. This is for all of us.
I mean, this quote just sums it up perfectly. The goal isn't to be some perfect person with no ghosts. The real goal is to get good at noticing when those ghosts walk into the room and knowing how to work with them, instead of letting them take over the whole conversation.
Because in the end, every room is a crowded place. Every conversation we have is filled with the echoes of our past, our parents, our fears, our hopes. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Who are the unseen guests sitting in your room?